9 generations, 9 hardcore Nuzlocks, 1 quest to prove that vanilla hardcore Nuzlocks are still way too easy. On top of the boring standard rules that are on screen right now, I made it so every dev will make the following runs at least a bit less of a cakewalk. Will this ultimate snowball effect eventually get the best of me, or will I easily beat 9 hardcore Nuzlocks in a row? This is the Hardcore Nuzlocke Gauntlet. If you didn't watch the first 2 Nuzlocks, that's totally fine, since these videos still work as standalones, but there will be some references and also spoilers for how those went in 3, 2, 1, and I finished Pokemon Gold with 2 deaths on the total counter. Not too bad, but because of this I had to spin the wheel twice to eliminate 2 random encounters, in this case routes 117 and 129. Still, I'm playing Pokemon Sapphire, a pretty easy game, so this shouldn't be a big deal. Okay, sure, I'll Nuzlocke Emerald instead. Man, did I just get peer pressured by a single viewer? Surely choosing the harder third version won't come back to bite me. Anyways, let's get started. After making the obligatory moving truck joke, since every YouTuber is legally required to do so, it's time to pick a starter, and I honestly didn't know Mudkip was the best starter when I chose it, but I'll definitely take it. Most early routes in Hoenn have pretty big encounter pools already, so it doesn't give a lot of room for tactical encounter routing, getting specific encounters first, so with the Tubes class you can guarantee getting a certain Pokemon on another route, so I just got a random Wingull and Lotad on Route 103 and 102. Route 101's encounter was the starter, and I'm not making that mistake again. Even though I tried to optimize my chances of getting a Tailo on Route 104 by getting a Poochyena and Petalburg Woods first, I got a Wurmple instead. But there are more ways to get certain encounters besides using the Dupes class. There's also Repel manipulation. Repels make it so you won't run into any Pokemon lower level than your lead, so if there's a Pokemon with a higher potential level than the rest, you can guarantee it as your encounter with Repel and a Pokemon at the right level. Since I already had Poochyena, I could greatly boost my odds of getting a Tailo at Route 116 by using Repel with a level 8 Pokemon, and this time I did get the beautiful bird. Another smart thing with Repels you can do in the Hoenn Nuzlocke is skipping the Route 16 encounter to first get a guaranteed Whisper and Brush of Tunnel, so you don't accidentally first get one on Route 16 and completely waste that encounter. Unlike Pokemon Gold's first gym leader, Roxanne was a complete pushover since Mudkip just spammed Water Gun until everything died and the stone badge was ours. With that done, my muddy buddy evolved into a goofy Marshtomp and we moved on with our cheerful journey to Dewford Town. With the old rod I got there, I caught a soon-to-be Gyarados, and the Granite Cave encounter ended up being a Makuhita, but neither of them would be really helpful against Brawley. Luckily, I still had my trusty Wingull to finish the Machop and Meditite with 2 wing attacks each. I guess we're switching. I literally miswrote that in the script, so I have to re-record this audio. Anyways, both final evolutions of Wurmple are amazing Pokemon against Brawley as well, since they both quad resist fighting attacks and can hit them with super effective moves such as Gust or Confusion, letting my Dustox one-shot the Makuhita with a single critical hit. Slateport City didn't have anything interesting, cause who even cares about the Team Aqua stuff here? You don't even fight an admin, so let's move on to an actual fight, May 3. I was planning on taking down her lead Wingull with the Electrike I caught on this route, but 2 confusion hits prevented that plan, so I swapped into my own Wingull to counter it. 2 wing attacks were enough for the KO, but the second one had to come from Tailo instead because of another confusion hit, but at least the Wingull finally went down. That just left Slugma to get obliterated by Marshtomp, and May's own starter to suffer slowly against my stalling Dustox, which eventually finished it with a 5th and final Poison Sting. The next stop was Mauville City, giving me access to one more route with grass, but that's Route 117, one of the 2 lost encounters. Still, since I chose Mudkip, I already had all I needed for Watson. What will his puny electric types do? Sonic Boom? That's a lot of damage. Marshtomp might have been in crit range there. I definitely dodged a bullet, and that was only the first Pokemon. Electrike went down without any issues, but Magneton could either use Sonic Boom for over half of my remaining HP and damage, or Supersonic, and we know how good my Confusion luck is. This is why you should always have a backup plan, and in this case that plan is called Hariyama. I used Fake Out for a bit of chip damage and then one Vital Throw to finish the Magneton. Okay, hold on. Hariyama's got this. There we go, I was definitely not worried one bit. Marshtomp could come back in on the Manectric, take a quick attack that wouldn't even kill with a critical hit, and finish the job with Mudshot. With 3 badges obtained, it's time to take on the fiery part of the region, where my first encounter was a Meryl? Okay, I then got an actual fire type in Fiery Path, Torkoal. I was a bit disappointed when I found out this doesn't have shell armor, but still this is way better than a Numel. Moving from the fire to the ash, I got nothing here since I used a repel to save this encounter for later. I also repelled through Route 114, but here it was so I could safely get to a place to rock smash for a Geodude encounter. And then I went to Meteor Falls, yet again using repels to postpone getting a Pokemon here. With those encounters done, or actually with those encounters not yet done, it's time for some evil team shenanigans. First we scared off Team Aqua in Meteor Falls, and then we had to stop Maxi from doing something? I think he was a bit too busy coming up with way too convoluted plans instead of getting good Pokemon, since this was an easy battle. Wingull may not have one-shot the Camerupt, but the best counter attack was Tackle, so that was no issue at all. I would not want such a terrible mon for myself, so luckily I found a Machop on Jagged Pass instead of a Numel, but then I arrived in Lava Ridge Town where, besides a Gift Why Not egg, Flannery was also waiting for me with actual scary fire types. Well, one scary fire type. The first 2 got OHKO'd by Marshtomp, and although Camerupt managed to survive for a bit longer than I would have liked, it didn't do anything harmful, so it all came down to her ace, Torkoal. I tried to confuse it with Supersonic, but it missed, of course, and my newly evolved Pelipper got hit by an Attract. So I hard switched into my Graveler while Torkoal set up Sunny Day, and yet again went for a gamble, Magnitude. This move varies in base power between 10 and 150, and I got hit with a stroke of luck getting the strongest Magnitude possible, which still didn't OHKO Torkoal. Which then retaliated with a sun boosted overheat for the one-shot. Since she was already out of potions, I could easily finish the battle, but this hurts. Losing my physically defensive rock type before the normal gym isn't great, and the Geodude line is pretty common in later generations. I think the plan here was just flawed from the start. I shouldn't have solely relied on Graveler, and instead should have chipped down the Torkoal with my water types first, then if necessary use my rock type to wrap up the fight. Farewell Rock, you will be missed. With a heavy heart, I replaced it with the Machop from Jagged Pass and immediately jumped to the next gym for vengeance. However, all I got was more misery. This random gym's trainer Slackoff just barely survived my newest addition's revenge and hit back with a devastating counter. It didn't help that my Machoke had terrible attack IVs, but honestly this is also just a lack of game knowledge. Knowing what random trainers have counter and mirror code is one of those things that can be life-saving in Nuzlocke, and I just don't have enough experience for that. But also, back to IVs. For some reason the gym trainers' Pokemon have perfect IVs, while the gym leaders don't. No clue why, but at least that means Norman should be easy, right? The spin now wasn't an issue, but against Vigoroth I thought that I could pivot through Wobbuffet, taking a feint attack with Hariyama, but it still went for Slash. And although the burn that I got before the battle boosted its attack with Guts, it also chipped it down even more. I managed to one-shot the Vigoroth, but this put me in a really bad spot against Linoone. If I stayed in, Hariyama would most likely die to an attack plus burn damage, but if I switched out, I risked that Linoone would go for Belly Drum, maxing its attack stat. I decided to swap in Gyarados, and this is bad. Real bad. Nothing could take an attack here, so something had to go down, and I chose Pelipper since I just have way better water types available. I thought my best shot here was to go Hariyama, use Fake Out, sack something else, and then do it again for the kill. The issue here was that I forgot about healing items. I didn't really think about it since I thought that Linoone would always go for the kill against a Hariyama, but when I sent out the sacrificial Marshtomp, Linoone got back to full with a Hyper Potion, and this was looking like a wipe to be honest. I then thought my only hope was Intimidated cycling with Gyarados by sacking a couple other Pokemon, but I overlooked the easiest solution the entire time. Linoone funnily enough went for a second Belly Drum after the Intimidate while I tried to sack Hariyama, but it went down afterwards anyways, and this was my opportunity to go into the myth, the legend, Wobbuffet. Like what happened to my own Pokemon a minute ago, Linoone's headbutt just barely didn't kill my punching bag, allowing it to retaliate with a counter to finally get rid of this demon. Norman also had a slacking, but this is why I kept Torkoal alive. By alternating between Protect and Flamethrower, this was no issue at all, and I got a filthy bloodstained balance badge. So, what went wrong here? Honestly, a lot of things. First of all, pre-burning a slow guts Pokemon that needs to take multiple hits in a game where burn steal did 1/8 every turn definitely wasn't worth it, especially since Hariyama could one-shot both Vigoroth and Lightning without the guts boost. So lesson 1, do the calcs. Lesson 2, and probably the biggest one from this battle, is know when to sack. In this gauntlet, it's even harder to bring yourself to sacking a Pokemon, but sometimes letting one Pokemon go down can save 2 later on. Here, Hariyama only would have died to Lightning if it landed a critical hit or flinched me, so risking Hariyama there could have prevented all the destruction caused by Pedidrum. And the final lesson is, again, do the calcs. I assumed that Lightning would one-shot all my Pokemon, so I didn't even consider the option of Wobbuffet until I had already sacked half of my team, so this isn't just do the calcs, but also don't rush. That's already lesson 4, and then also the actual final lesson is that the snowball effect sucks. If Graveler was still alive, that would have been a great asset to deal with the Lightning, but it dying against Flannery made this 5th gym fight a lot harder. So that's 3 more Pokemon for the death box, and this is suddenly looking really grim. At least we got Surf, unlocking a lot of new encounters, and there are still some old ones to grab as well. First of all, I won a coin flip in the Mirage Tower to get a Trapinch, which sounds great, but I actually never used it. Why am I talking about it then? Literally just to have a better 3-part structure here for this encounter section. Next I tested my luck in New Marvel, winning 2 more coin flips for first encountering a Magnemite and then it having Magnet Pool. Besides having an in-battle effect, it also has an overworld effect of forcing half of the wild encounters to be steel types if possible, so I went back to Route 113 since I saved that encounter and won yet another coin flip by getting a Skarmory here. And last up I got a Linoon, but no, this is fine, I can get over traumas, I'm not killing this. I'll just box it, never use it, and take up my anchor on the next gym leader, Winona. She was a very much needed break from the recent difficult gym fights. Manectric easily took down the pathetic Cloudbird, bringing out the not so pathetic Cloudbird, but I had a very much not so pathetic Steelbird to completely wall it. The resisted Dragon Breath did almost no damage while Steel Wing slowly chipped it down, so eventually the fluffy chicken was completely chopped up, making way for Manectric to sweep the rest of Winona's team and fetch me the 6th badge. After I somehow ended that first stream on a high note, I set out in the next one to finish the Nuzlocke, but before I could make more progress, I of course got more encounters. The only important one before more evil team stuff was Shuppet, but no one cares about the story anyway, so let's immediately skip to more encounters. With the Super Rod from Moss Deep, I could fish to get a Wilmer in one place, then go to another to get a Sharpedo. This took way too long because fishing is absolutely miserable in this game, but it was definitely worth the pain since this would help a lot against Tate and Liza. You know what else would help? If you liked and subscribe. Dust Dogs. Yes, I was bringing this hard poison early bug Pokemon to the notoriously difficult Psychic Gym, and I didn't even get it to the level cap. There's actually a very good reason for this though. At this level, Xatu and Claydol would always both target the Dustox slot with Psychic, so by switching into my Dark-type Sharpedo, I could avoid taking any damage on a turn, while Gyarados got a free hit on the Claydol. I thought Crunch would kill Xatu on the following turn, but I guess not. I probably accidentally was using a damage calc for a later gen with a physical special slit, so it got off a Confuse Ray on Sharpedo, but at least Gyarados' Surf finished the Xatu. I was definitely testing my luck here, but fortunately Sharpedo broke through to kill the Xatu and dodged a potentially lethal crit from Claydol, so I could finish the battle deathless by swapping it out for Skarmory, which together with Gyarados easily took care of the remaining 2 Pokemon. I could now use the HM for Dive, letting me explore the abandoned ship where I could get a Water Stone to finally evolve my Lombre into Ludicolo. This also let me go down to Seafloor Cavern to completely ignore Team Aqua here and instead get a Zubat, so I could then go to Shoal Cave where the only remaining option was a very adorable and very round Spheal. Okay, I guess I should now actually deal with Team Aqua stuff. Just like Maxie, Archie was a complete pushover. I only needed a single Pokemon this time. My Magnemite from New Marvel apparently found 2 friends, definitely not jealous, so it's now a Magneton that even with Spark managed to sweep the entirety of Archie's team. Archie's and Maxie's sheer stupidity makes the local weather gods go into a frenzy, but honestly this is nothing compared to the weather here in the Netherlands, and here we can't even summon a big green snake if we wanted to stop raining during our daily bike trip. Anyways, it's time for the final gym fight against Juan. Most of his Pokemon weren't really a threat, so I could freely set up some spikes at the start of the fight, but the one Pokemon that mattered was his infamous ace, Kingdra. The combination of Double Team, Rest, and having only one weakness spells a recipe for disaster. Luckily, I'm big brain and came prepared. The shop that I caught in Mount Pyre had one purpose, and that was Skill Swap. This meant that Kingdra now had Insomnia, stopping it from using Rest. I could then simply go into a bulky Pokemon such as Walrein and slowly chip it down while it couldn't heal back up. Also, since I already made Juan use some healing items earlier in the battle. There was actually another benefit to the strategy, since apparently he still tries to go for Rest once he's low, but it just keeps failing, so that's an easy victory. Now that I had all 8 badges, I could challenge the Pokemon League, but there was one more encounter I wanted to get. Since I already had a Zubat, there was a 50-50 chance of getting a Bagon in the lowest floor of Meteor Falls, which I repelled through the first time I was there. And yet again, I won another coin flip for the encounter, giving me one of the best encounters in the game. Once it was a Salamence, I could teach it a variety of moves, letting it easily sweep Wally in Victory Road, so now it's actually time for the Pokemon League. I had an absolutely bonkers Elite Four team of Skarmory, Magneton, Salamence, Walrein, Gyarados and Ludicolo, and an absolutely awful loot with those sunglasses, so let's do this. The first battle against Sydney was a total breeze. Skarmory got up 3 layers of spikes, so each of Sydney's Pokemon would take a quarter of its HP when switching in, letting Salamence easily sweep by simply spamming Brick Break. Phoebe was a bit more annoying with her stally ghost types, but 2 could play at that game. I again clicked spikes 3 times at the start of the battle, then went into the tanky monster that is Walrein. Ice Beam could deal decent damage, but for her second Dusclops, I had a special moveset prepared. Toxic, Rest and Sleep Talk. Especially with a Chesto Berry, there was no way Dusclops could outdamage Walrein, so it eventually went down to Toxic, and Salamence wrapped up the fight with Dragon Claw against her final Pokemon, Sableye. Glacia was actually quite scary, and this battle really didn't go as planned. I only managed to set up 2 layers of spikes this time, since Helio started going for Ice Ball, so I brought in Ludicolo to stop it with Fake Out and take it down with a couple Giga Rains, but I did get paralyzed in the process. I honestly have no clue what I did against the first Glady after that, but I eventually just got back to Toxic style with Walrein, which surprisingly didn't go so well against the second Celio. Because Attract prevented Walrein from using Rest multiple times, it ended up at only 39 HP when the second Glady with Explosion got sent out. I didn't expect it to go for that right now, so I first swapped into Gyarados to drop its attack stats and do a bit of damage, then brought in Magneton to take the big hit. Last up was our own Walrein, which actually could live a Thunderbolt, and Surf could do a lot of damage back to Magneton, so my safest bet was Toxic Style with my own Walrein, but he's low on HP. I wasn't confident that would be enough to take a potentially critical Surf, so instead I brought out Salamence on the Water type attack, then swapped into my tank on the Ice type attack for only 6 damage. Since my Walrein was faster, I could safely go for a Rest here, immediately wake up with a Chesto Berry, Toxic Style for a minute or 2 and get out of this battle unscathed. The last of the Elite Four, Drake can easily be swept by a decently fast Pokemon with Ice Beam. Oh wait, he has a Kingdra in this game. Since it has no Dragon moves, I could use Salamence to take care of it with a bit of luck, not getting paralyzed by Body Slam and hitting 2 Dragon Claws through Smokescreen. Flygon was an easy prey for my Gyarados, but it did get a burn with Flamethrower, ending my good luck streak. At least Blizzard didn't miss, so Gyarados was about half HP when Drake's ace Salamence got sent out. With its wide coverage, it can be tricky to deal with, but with some smart pivoting it should be doable. I first brought out Magneton on a Rock Slide, then went into Walrein on the expected Flamethrower. There was no risk of staying in, since even a critical Rock Slide wouldn't be lethal, but then Walrein flinched. Now staying in would risk a crit, so instead I did some unnecessary switching to eventually be in a position where I had to risk a crit with Ludicolo instead. Luckily Drake didn't get the 1 in 16 chance, Ice Beam finished his last Pokemon and we could move on to the champion. Wallace is probably the one thing about Emerald that's easier than in Ruby and Sapphire, but that did not make this an easy fight. The Walrein was not an issue at all for my Ludicolo, but Tentacruel was a different story. I could safely go into Magneton on a Sludge Bomb, but I didn't want to risk a critical hit Hydro Pump, so it's time for more pivoting. First into Salamence on the Water attack, and then since Tentacruel would have outsped us, into Wall Rain on the Ice Beam. Okay, so what I said there was actually not true. Looking back on this, Salamence would have actually outsped Tentacruel. If you look at Salamance's stats, he has 125 speed, and although Tentacruel probably would have 132, that does not mean that Tentacruel is necessarily faster. In the early Pokemon games, some gym badges actually made it so all of your Pokemon would get a 10% boost in a certain stat called a badge boost. For example, in Gen 3, the Dynamo badge gives all of your Pokemon 10% extra speed. So even though Salamence had a lower speed stat than Tentacruel, it still would have outsped it. A bit of a mistake, but hey, you live you learn, and let's continue on. I didn't have the best moves for this, so I just tried taking it down with a couple strings, but because of a poison from Sludge Bomb, I got put in crit range. I didn't see a safe way to do this, so for my best odds I went into Magneton on another Sludge Bomb, then risked a critical hit, and Magneton lived. Tentacruel surely didn't, and that was basically the scary part of the fight done. Wallace's Gyarados went down to my Gyarados' Thunderbolt, his double teaming Ludicolo got hard countered by Aerial Ace Skarmory, Whiscash got absolutely destroyed by my Ludicolo's Giga Drain, and finally his Milotic could have maybe been a bit annoying, but a critical hit sped up the process, making Giga Drain a 2-shot for the win and making us the new Hoenn champions. That was a roller coaster. The early game was no issue at all, mid game was hell with the normal gym, and then the rest of the game wasn't necessarily easy, but I didn't have any more deaths after Norman. Either way, that's 3 out of the 9 Hardcore Nuzlocks of the Gauntlet done with next up, not Diamond, but Platinum. Curse you, J. Palma. The full Gauntlet playlist will be on screen right now, and that's all I've got for today. Whatever you do, don't subscribe, don't like, and don't leave a nice comment. I hope you enjoyed the video, I'll see you next time, and of course, stay alive.